I'm on this page. Let's break for a moment. This has come up a few times during different webinars, and we've had some recent discussions on it recently. I'm not the best stock picker of all time. I'm not even saying I am. I'm not the best stock return. I don't have the highest return of the portfolios of our PowerOptions users that I talk to, and I'm allowed to look at their portfolio during coaching sessions and so forth. But Kenneth asked, would you show how you add details to your big chart? I can't seem to create any more than the most basic view. BITX is what I'm trading. Okay, so now that we're on the chart, let's go to Kenneth. Same conversation that you've had with Ernie, but he might add one or two other things depending on what he's evaluating the time. Oh, shoot. BUTX does not help us, does it? BITX. My apologies. Hey. Sorry, I'm yelling at my keyboard, not you guys. All right. Let's get to that. There we go. Now, I want to go to advanced chart. Okay, so first off, Kenneth, if you come in to BITX on big charts and you just click basic, it's saving a cookie for me, so it's still showing what I want. But you probably just had the basic 12-month with nothing in it. So what I want to do is go to the advanced chart. My general default is if once you go into the advanced chart, you'll see something like this. And let's say that, okay, let's just start from scratch. Let's clear the chart settings. I'm going to do it permanently. All right, so let's go ahead and erase all that. I come into big charts and BITX, and oh God, I don't like that. Okay, so I see its ups and downs. I see it's all over the place, Kenneth. I'm looking at a 1-year chart with just some basic information. All right, what I want to do, time frame. In general, and as I mentioned, you know what I do, Kenneth. 50% of my portfolio is in the married put positions. 10 to 15%, about 15% is in bull put credit spreads or bear call credit spreads, mostly bull put credit spreads when the stocks are going in the direction that I want. 5 to 10%, 10% are in calendar spreads, stocks that I can't afford to use as a married put position in my portfolio. So I'm doing quote unquote poor man's covered calls, even though I hate that term. You know that, Kenneth. But that's what I'm looking for. And then I've got a couple strangles out there for earnings, long strangles, not short, long strangles. And then I would be looking at a couple of things, maybe buying VIX calls. Right now, I'm not buying VIX calls because the VIX is high. I've been looking at bear call credit spreads. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Okay, but anyway, my defaults that I set up, I don't know if Ernie uses 6 months or 3 months, but I use a 3-month chart. So I go into time frame, I go to 3 months, and I'm going to leave it at daily. Nothing to compare to, but it's there. I'm not going to use it. The indicators that I use. Following Ernie's suggestions and what you saw with the Bollinger Bands, I'm going to use the Bollinger Bands, which are based on a 20-day cycle. So I'm going to use just a single SMA, and I want the SMA 20. Upper indicators, I'm going to use the Bollinger Bands as you saw. Okay, looking for Bollinger Band breakouts to the upside, to the downside. Might talk about one of those if I see it on BITX when we pull it up. Lower indicator, the first indicator I want to use is the MACD. Now, the next indicator, I usually don't have this up during the webinar, Kenneth, because it extends the graph. So I just, as you saw, when I first linked over for JB, we looked at that stock chart there. You just saw the Bollinger Bands and the MACD. But yes, I'll usually have volume underneath of it. Now, I don't use the volume plus, but you can use the volume. And I may also just include the RSI. I'm not saying the RSI is better than the fast stochastic or the slow stochastic, but these are the main indicators I use for. The RSI for me is more of a tertiary indicator, something I look for the third or fourth level. My focus is typically on the MACD and the SMA 20. Ernie's focus is a little bit more on the Bollinger Bands and the SMA 20 with an eye to the MACD is probably that secondary or tertiary one that I mentioned. Now, if I just draw the chart there, you've got this kind of level here. You see the MACD I was talking about. You've got your volume levels, and you've got the RSI. But hey, this isn't good enough for me. Ernie goes large, or Ernie goes big. I typically go large. So let's go set that to large on the size under the chart style. All right. So this is more akin to what you first saw when we pulled up that first chart. We were talking with JB. Now, I use this for years in the webinars. And for a couple years, when some of those new flashy things came out for the different online brokers, I changed it and I was using the black grid view. Okay. Because a lot of them were using more of this blue-black style of, hey, these bright lights and these dark grids. And this isn't even the one I was using. Was it graph paper? Oh, it was black. It was straight black. My apologies. So, Kenneth, you remember when I was using these charts here, but it didn't have the grid lines in it? To be honest with you, Ernie got frustrated with me and he said, can you please stop using that chart? I can't tell where the lines are for anything, and I don't like this look at all. Okay, so that's perfectly fine. So what you see, for me, what I like to use, what you saw is the blue and white. I prefer this view. I'm not doing advanced candlesticks, but hey, if you want to use candlesticks or bar, mountain or bar, HLC, I prefer to just stick with the OHLC personally because my focus again is on the MACD. MACD crossovers related to the SMA 20, when I would make adjustments and things of that nature. So again, 3 months, daily frequency, nothing to compare to. Moving average, SMA single with the 20, Bollinger Bands. Lower indicator, MACD. If I put in the lower indicator too, it's going to be the volume. And if I do include the tertiary, it's going to be the RSI. Blue and white is what I prefer. Naturally, you saw why I don't prefer the black. Ernie asked me to stop using that. But that grids one is not terrible. I kind of like that one too. Ernie still doesn't like it. So he doesn't want his webinars to be shown in that. But he allows me, he's okay with similar to what he uses here, the blue and the white. And that's what we like to use. And of course, I think maybe I might have even been on big when we first opened this up. I think we were, weren't we? We were on big because it's easier to see. So large or big, your choice, Kenneth. But this is how I set up mine. It's 90% the same as Ernie sets up his. I'm just not sure about the months and his order of his secondary and tertiary indicators there. If he has volume above MACD or if he has RSI above volume, I'm not sure on that. But this is essentially the charts that you see, the charts that I use. And again, with this situation, you can see some of the things. If I was in a married put on BITX, what is this anyway? I'm sorry. Is this the Treasury? No, Bitcoin. Okay, I'm sorry. It's Bitcoin. All right. So I'm in a married put here going into these months, and I see that crossover right there. This is a strong crossover. When you start to see it drop below the SMA 20, we're negative, and then we're below what's called the divergence line. We're negative into the divergence, and we see a MACD crossover. This was a sudden event I probably wouldn't have caught. I probably wouldn't have caught this, but when I see this, I may be selling an income method number one, preparing for something to fall because it's starting to drop below the SMA 20, and the MACD is converging to a negative. I would have liked to have said I would have bought a 12, but I think that move is too sudden and I would have missed it with the second put. Now, we hit the bottom here and start coming back up. So that's right about here. But right about here is when I probably would have rolled down the put at this point, seeing a confirmation of a bullish move with a positive MACD crossover. Did I miss it by 5 or 6 points? Yes, I did. But I wanted to be sure. I don't always like to look for the bottom in this case. I like to see a confirmation for me of that MACD crossover and going above the SMA 20. That's when I moved the put. But then again, peaked out and then we fell again. Might have rolled down the put again here once I saw this and the stock coming back here. So used a 9 here to lower the cost basis, used another 9. Probably would have sold a call here, as I mentioned, maybe sold a call here. Lowering the cost basis, averaging down, moving up here. Another hiccup, but it's a quick hiccup, but then it stables out. So it's hard to tell if it would have done anything active in this time frame as well. And JB says if you had used income method number one for SPY in late September, or BITX in this case, would you have been exercised when the price went up? No, I don't have to be exercised, JB. That's part of the income methods. Income method number one is selling the call. Just like any covered call or any other position, I could roll the call up or adjust a position, right? I can roll the position at any given time. I'd follow the rules in the blueprint for income method number 2 or possibly income method number 7 to decide what steps I would have taken next if the stock exceeded the call that I sold in that first month or two. All right. But again, sorry, Kenneth, going back, that's the setup we look for. One more time, 3 months, SMA 20 is what I use. What you see in the webinars, Kenneth, my apologies. Bollinger Bands, MACD is my second main indicator, may have volume, and then RSI is maybe a tertiary third place one as well. I like to use the blue and white OHLC. I'm not even using really the up and downs. If you want to use candlesticks, that's fine. If you're more of a candlestick trader, that's perfectly fine. I've just found that I've been successful enough to meet my goals and to meet the timings I need with using the MACD, SMA 20, and Bollinger Bands, along with, of course, the market sentiment tool on PowerOptions for buy and sell signal warnings and what I'm looking for. I'm in a long-term married put and I start to see things change against what I want. That sort of helps me trigger if I'm going to use an income method, number 6, number 9, something along those lines. What am I thinking? A 12 if I'm really nervous about something or what's going on in the market. Bitcoin is a different animal like the VIX, right? It's based on a sort of a different underlying. So it's harder to say what I would have done following these techniques. A couple of weeks ago, we had the discussion on XOM. And looking at the chart there, I believe it was for Kirk. I can't remember who it was. But, when would you have picked the bottom here? And, you see the true bottom is right about here at this point. But honestly, if I entered a married put or if I was in a married put and doing an adjustment, I probably would have done it here. I would have missed it by a few points because I'm looking for what I feel is that confirmation that now the MACD is having a positive crossover. We're back up to the SMA 20. I would have missed the better buy point, but I still would have gotten at a good point. And in that webinar, if you remember, Kenneth, I'm not sure if you were with us, but we compared what the return would have been on the married put on his position had he entered it here and bought the 5 or 6 month output versus if he had bought it here and waited to buy the put at this point, what his locked in profit would have been versus what my profit would have been. And I bought it here and bought the married put position. Naturally, he was better in both for picking this better bottom. He gave me that specific date that was here of the purchase price. And I said, well, too many times you see a bottom and it ends up potentially being a false bottom. I want that second confirmation. I want that second confirmation to be showing me that it's going to be prolonged. Because sometimes, you get those little false signals right here. Was this a good bottom at 114? Sure. Until it came back to it 10, 15 days later, and then was down here at, this is what my signals show me I should have bought at. Well, of course. But again, were these true signals? Did it sustain a positive MACD crossover? It's close. This one did not at all. This, to me, was the true buy point, the confirmed buy point in that case, but I missed his quote-unquote bottom by a few points. Okay? Nothing's perfect. And anything, black swan event, someone in Europe decides to push a red button. They use a bigger weapon. What's going on in the conflicts in the Mideast? That escalates beyond what we expected. We're seeing strong storms intensify here in severity in the southeast, unfortunately, and mid-Atlantic, south of us, thankfully so far. But those poor souls in North Carolina and everything. We've got the election coming up. Talks about other rate hike and everything along those lines. I use the signals that work for me, Kenneth, and this is how I've set it up, and this is how you hear me talk about it on the webinars. And it's usually pretty accurate from what I'm looking for management, setting alerts in the portfolio of, hey, is my stock, my bullish stock in my married put, is it below the SMA 20? I looked for it to be above the SMA 20. Did it drop below the SMA 20? Was it in a certain range of that lower Bollinger Band? Did my MACD go negative? Those are alerts I set in the portfolio. So I know that, I'm seeing where the stock's moving on my watch list on PowerOptions. I'm seeing what it's doing in the portfolio, but am I missing something where it suddenly crossed over and I need to take action on this immediately? That's what we're looking at in these cases. That's how I use this. Ernie uses it the same way. But again, his order might be different from what's lower indicator 1, 2, and 3 versus what I use. Set it up, store your chart settings. Remember to do that afterwards. It keeps that cookie in place. Now, again, Kenneth, if your specific browser deletes cookies or removes cookies when you're done with your browser session and you close your browser, you're going to lose that each time. It has to be based on a cookie to store it in big charts of what you're looking for. But Kenneth, this is what I look for. This is how I set up mine. And again, it's 90% similar to what Ernie uses on his. If you have any further questions about that, Kenneth, you know how to reach me. Send me an email to support@powerop.com. Schedule a coaching session, of course, as always, under the free and home tab, and go from there. Now, Mike says, what did you say about saving a cookie? I did not understand. Okay. This is not our direct link. We're not directly linked to this. Your PowerOptions account is not directly linked to big charts. Your browser is, meaning that I'm in Firefox right now. Okay. And Firefox, of course, you can't see it, but there we go. There's Firefox there, Gartner Inc. and the GoToWebinar there. Using Firefox there, Mike, what I'm doing is telling it to store the chart settings that I just set on my browser, whether you're using Edge, whether you're using Chrome, whether you're using Safari. You're asking it to store the chart settings. So anytime you go to big charts with one of these links, it's storing that setting, that using a cookie, that little, cookie thing that's in the browsers and on the internet and everything, to link to your specific browser with IP address XYZ, Firefox, so on and so forth, wants these settings when you go to bigcharts.marketwatch.com, but it's giving you the specific link for the symbol and everything else. Okay, so that's what I did. I clicked Store Chart Settings. This Store Settings feature allows you to use the current charting parameters, blah, blah, blah. Click OK to store these chart settings or default parameters. This feature stores a cookie on your browser. There's no security problem with this. However, your browser may notify that Big Charts is storing a cookie. Now, for security reasons, Mike, of course, many browsers have a setting that you're allowed to set for security that when I leave the session, when I close my browser, delete all cookies, temporary files, or everything like that. If you have that set on your independent browser, whether it's Edge, whether it's Chrome, whether it's anything along those lines, it's going to remove that cookie. So come tomorrow morning, you go to PowerOptions, you find your portfolio, you link to the stock chart to do research. It's going to go back to that default that Kenneth kind of mentioned. It's going to go back to that basic chart view because the little internet setting, the cookie setting it needed on your browser had been removed from settings that you had put in your security. Simple as that. Okay, so that's sort of the thing there that happens. That can happen. I've had customers talk with Ernie, spend 45, 50 minutes on a coaching call with Ernie and walk through, of course, the different types of structures and everything and getting the chart set up. And 2 days later, they email me and say, my chart settings didn't save. And it's because of that security setting in the browser where they say, or even if the other problem I've had before, it's happened to me too, Mike, Firefox updates, Edge updates, even my computer gets an update. Well, when it updates, sometimes the new update actually deletes the cookies or some of the temporary files on the internet that my default browser. It'll do that automatically. And so I'm sitting here, Monday or Tuesday morning, and I just spent 10 minutes waiting for my new update from Microsoft to come through or whatever cumulative pack needed to be updated. And now, let me go in, let me look at my stocks, let me look at my portfolio. Why the heck is Big Charts looking stupid again? Why is it just showing me a silly 12-month chart in the small view? What is going on? Where are all my settings? And it was because of that update. It deleted some of the temporary files, cache, or the cookies in the background, and I got to start from scratch. Once a year, maybe, but that could happen as well.